If an alien warrior ever lets you touch her armor, don't wash it, because in some parts of the galaxy, that means something very different. The washing unit on Sean Carter's tiny orbital repair station hummed like an old refrigerator struggling through another long shift as warm steam curled into the recycled air, carrying the sharp scent of coolant and machine grease. Outside the observation window, a frozen moon hung silent and enormous, its pale surface stretching thousands of miles below the station like a sheet of cracked marble under starlight. Sean leaned against the metal counter with a tired sigh, wiping oil from his hands with a rag that had clearly given up years ago. Running a one-man salvage and repair outpost 3,000 miles above an unclaimed frontier moon meant long hours, broken equipment, and the occasional weird customer drifting in from deep space. Tonight's customer, however, was easily the strangest he'd ever had. The alien girl had arrived 6 hours earlier in a battered scout craft that barely held together through docking. She hadn't said much, only that her navigation array was fried and she needed temporary shelter while her ship cooled down. Sean had seen plenty of aliens over the years, miners, traders, the occasional wandering explorer, but none quite like her. She was tall, graceful, with faint violet skin that caught the light like polished glass and long silver hair that moved gently even when the air was still, as if responding to some invisible current. Her armor had been the real surprise though. It wasn't metal exactly. When she removed it near the airlock, the plates shifted with a subtle living shimmer, like liquid crystal sliding across a surface. Sean had assumed it was just some advanced alien tech and, more importantly, extremely dirty. Grease stains. Burn marks. Dust from who knew how many planets. So naturally, like any practical mechanic, he tossed the armor pieces into the station's industrial wash unit. Now the machine rattled happily while blue indicator lights blinked across its panel. There, Sean muttered to himself with quiet satisfaction. Good as new. Inside the spinning drum, the alien armor began to glow faintly, thin lines of light spreading across the plates like veins awakening under the surface. Sean frowned and stepped closer, squinting through the round glass window. That's new. The glow intensified, shifting from soft blue to a deep, pulsing violet that illuminated the cramped laundry corner of the station. Somewhere down the corridor, a door slid open. Footsteps approached quickly. Sean turned just as the alien girl appeared at the entrance. She stopped the instant her golden eyes landed on the washing unit. The moment stretched unnaturally quiet. Her expression changed, first confusion, then disbelief, and finally something much sharper, something that made the air in the room feel suddenly heavier. She stepped forward slowly, staring at the spinning armor as if watching a star collapse. Human, she said softly, her voice calm but carrying a tension Sean couldn't quite place. Did you wash that yourself? Sean scratched the back of his neck. Yeah. Figured it could use a cleaning. Hope that's okay. The drum rotated once more. The armor flared brighter. The alien girl froze completely. For a long second she didn't blink. Then she looked at him with an expression Sean had never seen before, half shock, half realization, like someone who had just watched a harmless mistake trigger something much bigger. Sean Carter, she whispered carefully. Do you have any idea what washing a warrior's armor means where I come from? Sean opened his mouth to answer, but before he could say a word, every warning light on the repair station flickered to life at once. The warning lights pulsed red across the narrow walls of the station, washing the metal corridors in a slow heartbeat of color while the low hum of the machinery shifted into a sharper tone that Sean Carter had only heard a few times in his life. It was the station telling him that something big had just appeared on the sensors. Sean turned toward the main console in the corner of the room, his boots clanging against the metal floor as he crossed the cramped laundry bay in 3 quick steps. That cannot be good, he muttered under his breath while the console screen flickered awake. Behind him, the alien girl did not move at first. Her eyes were still locked on the glowing armor spinning behind the washer door, the violet light reflecting across her face like distant lightning. Then another alarm chimed, deeper this time, the kind that usually meant approaching traffic. Sean leaned over the console and tapped the sensor display. The image expanded across the screen. At first he thought the system had glitched. The radar grid showed dozens of new signals blooming into existence above the frozen moon, each one marked with a sharp triangular symbol that meant one thing in frontier navigation systems. Warships. Sean blinked slowly. You have got to be kidding me. The alien girl stepped up beside him now, her movements controlled but noticeably tense. She studied the display with a calm that did not match the situation. The sensor grid updated again, and the triangular markers multiplied. Not one ship. Not 10. An entire formation sliding out of jump space nearly 2,000 miles above the station. The stars beyond the observation window flickered as massive silhouettes formed against the darkness. Sean stared through the glass. Even from this distance the shapes were enormous, smooth curved hulls reflecting pale starlight like polished stone. Okay, Sean said carefully, rubbing the back of his neck. I do not suppose those are friendly tourists. The alien girl did not answer right away. Instead she lifted her wrist and tapped a small device embedded along her forearm. A faint holographic display unfolded above her hand, showing the same fleet pattern the station sensors were tracking. Her golden eyes narrowed slightly. They found me faster than expected. Sean slowly turned his head. They found you? She looked at him then, and for the first time since she arrived there was no confusion in her expression. Only certainty. Those ships belong to the Imperial Vanguard of the Terra Dominion, she said quietly. They do not travel in groups like this unless they are searching for someone important. Sean pointed a thumb toward himself. Let me guess. That someone is not the guy who runs a repair shop the size of a gas station. A small, almost apologetic breath escaped her. No, Sean Carter. It is not. The console chimed again. A new message flashed across the screen in bright white text. Incoming transmission request. Priority channel. Sean stared at it. Well, that is new. The alien girl watched the screen as if she already knew what it meant. Outside the window the fleet slowly spread across the orbit above the moon, silent and patient like hunters circling a single point. Sean tapped the console but did not answer yet. You mind explaining why a whole alien navy just showed up outside my station? He asked. The alien girl hesitated for a single second. Then she looked toward the laundry unit again where the armor continued to glow brighter with every rotation. When she spoke, her voice carried a strange mix of disbelief and reluctant acceptance. Because, she said quietly, according to my people's oldest laws, the human who washes a warrior's armor becomes something very difficult for an empire to ignore. The incoming transmission icon blinked steadily on Sean Carter's console, a quiet white square in the middle of a screen now filled with symbols he had never seen before. Outside the station window the alien fleet continued spreading across orbit, their ships positioning themselves with eerie precision until the frozen moon and the tiny repair station were completely surrounded. Sean leaned back slowly in his chair and rubbed his face with both hands. Okay, he said quietly to himself. This is officially above my pay grade. The alien girl remained standing beside the console, watching the tactical display like someone studying a chessboard that had already been decided several moves ahead. Her silver hair drifted gently in the station's recycled air as the purple glow from the washing unit still pulsed faintly down the corridor. Sean glanced at her. You said those ships belonged to an empire. She nodded once. The Terra Dominion. Sean let out a low whistle. Sounds expensive. Instead of smiling, she lifted her wrist device again and expanded the holographic display. The projection floated above the console, revealing a map of the surrounding system. Sean leaned closer, curiosity pushing aside his nerves. The display showed dozens of star systems connected by glowing pathways that spread outward like a web across half the projection sphere. At the center of the map burned a brilliant blue star labeled in symbols Sean could not read. That, she said quietly, pointing to the center, is the capital of the Dominion. Sean studied the map, his mechanic's brain automatically measuring scale. The projection zoomed outward again, and he felt his stomach drop slightly. The network did not stop at a handful of systems. It expanded across hundreds of stars. Maybe thousands. That is not a small empire, he said slowly. No, she replied. It is not. The console chimed again, louder this time. The incoming signal had upgraded from request to command. Sean noticed the channel identifier now displayed a symbol that resembled a crown formed from 3 curved blades. Let me guess, he said. That one matters. It does. Sean hesitated before touching the console. You want to tell me who exactly is calling my repair station right now? The alien girl studied the display for a moment, then answered with quiet certainty. Someone who commands fleets. Sean leaned back again and glanced out the observation window. One of the massive ships had moved closer, its surface reflecting the distant sunlight like polished glass stretching nearly a mile from bow to stern. Lines of blue light ran along its hull like rivers of energy. The ship looked less like a machine and more like a piece of architecture carved from a single crystal. You know, Sean said carefully, when I opened this station 3 years ago, the most dangerous thing I expected was unpaid invoices. The alien girl finally allowed a faint expression that almost resembled amusement. Then the console emitted a sharp tone. The incoming transmission activated on its own. The screen shifted from censored data to a live signal. A tall figure appeared in the projection, clad in armor similar to the pieces currently rotating inside Sean's washing unit, except this armor glowed with deep crimson light. The figure's eyes scanned the room once, then stopped on the alien girl. Cerelia of the 3rd Vanguard, the voice said, calm and resonant. You have been located. Sean blinked. He slowly turned toward her. Cerelia, he repeated. So that is your name. She did not answer immediately. Instead she lifted her chin slightly and faced the projection with the composure of someone accustomed to command. The figure in the transmission continued. By order of the Dominion Council, you are instructed to surrender immediately. Sean felt a sudden tightening in his chest. He glanced at the alien girl, expecting fear. Instead he saw something far stranger. Relief. The armored figure's gaze shifted slightly. For the first time it focused directly on Sean Carter. The room seemed to grow colder. And human, the voice continued, the records indicate that you have performed a ceremonial act recognized by Sarati law. Sean slowly pointed at himself. Wait, me. The projection brightened slightly as the scanning systems adjusted. Yes, the figure replied. You. Sean Carter stared at the projection of the armored commander and then slowly leaned closer to the console as if that might somehow make the situation less ridiculous. Hold on, he said carefully. Before we continue, I need to clarify something. I fix broken thrusters and recharge life support batteries. I do not perform ceremonial acts. The figure on the screen did not react with confusion the way a human might. Instead the commander lifted one gauntlet hand and a faint beam of scanning light spread across the room like a soft ripple through water. Sean felt the hairs on his arms rise as the beam passed over him. His console screen instantly filled with new symbols and data columns that definitely were not part of the station's software 5 seconds ago. Cerelia noticed it at the same time he did. They are scanning you, she said quietly. Sean glanced down at himself. Well, that feels rude. The commander's voice returned, calm and analytical. Biological structure confirmed. Species classification, human. Environmental origin, terrestrial world, oxygen-rich atmosphere, average gravity 0.98 standard. Genetic stability, unusually high. Sean blinked. Unusually high compared to what? The scanning beam brightened slightly. The console began translating fragments of the analysis in real time. Sean watched the words appear across his screen. Resilience markers detected. Cellular repair rate above imperial baseline. Neural response speed outside Sarathi parameters. Sean frowned. That cannot be right. Cerelia leaned forward and studied the console with intense focus. Her eyes moved rapidly across the translated data. The commander continued speaking as if delivering a routine report. Subject demonstrates physiological durability uncommon among known allied species. Sean rubbed the back of his neck. Okay, that sounds impressive, but I still do not understand why you people care about a guy running a repair shop above a frozen rock. The commander paused for a moment before answering. Because according to Sarathi law, a warrior's armor forms a living bond with the individual who cleanses it. Sean pointed toward the corridor where the washing unit was still humming quietly. You mean the laundry thing? Cerelia closed her eyes briefly as if accepting an unavoidable truth. Yes. The commander nodded once. The armor confirms the ritual. Sean turned toward Cerelia. Wait a second. You are telling me your armor just decided I am important because I used soap? She shook her head slightly. It is not that simple. The console chimed again as the translation system processed another line of data from the scan. Sean read it aloud slowly. Symbiotic armor recognition active. His voice trailed off. Hold on. The washing unit. Door suddenly unlocked with a soft mechanical click. Sean and Cerelia both turned at the same time. The armor plates inside the machine had stopped spinning. Instead they floated gently in the center of the drum as if gravity no longer applied to them. Thin strands of violet light stretched between the plates like threads weaving themselves into a single shape. Sean felt his stomach tighten. That was definitely not happening earlier. Cerelia stepped forward slowly. Her expression had shifted from concern to astonishment. The armor is responding, she whispered. The commander's voice grew sharper. Confirm visual. Sean lifted his hands helplessly toward the console camera. Yeah, you might want to see this. The glowing armor drifted out of the washing unit as if guided by invisible currents. The pieces hovered briefly in the air before settling onto the metal floor in front of Sean Carter. For a moment nothing happened. Then the largest plate tilted upward slightly and rotated until it faced him directly. The console displayed a single translated line. Bond candidate verified. Sean stared at the words. Then he looked at Cerelia. Please tell me that does not mean what I think it means. Cerelia did not answer right away. Her golden eyes were fixed on the armor. When she finally spoke, her voice carried a mix of disbelief and something very close to awe. It means, she said slowly, the armor has accepted you. The glowing armor did not move for several long seconds, yet the entire station suddenly felt different, as if the air itself had become aware of Sean Carter standing in the room. The plates resting on the metal floor pulsed with slow violet light that reflected off the console and across Cerelia's face. Sean looked down at the armor, then back at the commander's projection. Okay, he said carefully, raising both hands as if trying to calm a situation that had already gotten far out of control. I think everyone here is jumping to conclusions. I ran a wash cycle. That is all. The commander did not respond immediately. Instead, the holographic display beside the transmission filled with new data lines. Dozens of unknown symbols streamed across the projection as additional scans began. Sean's own console struggled to translate them, but fragments of English text appeared among the alien language. Symbiotic response confirmed. Biological compatibility analysis in progress. Host interface potential detected. Sean leaned forward slightly. Host interface, he repeated slowly. Cerelia was already kneeling beside the armor. She did not touch it, but she studied the plates with intense concentration. The violet light brightened when she leaned closer, reacting to her presence like a heartbeat speeding up. This should not be happening, she said quietly. Sean glanced between her and the screen. That is becoming a very common sentence today. The commander finally spoke again, but the calm tone from before had changed. There was now something sharper beneath it. Curiosity. Human Sean Carter, the commander said, remain where you are. Sean blinked. That was the plan. The scanning beam returned, stronger this time. It swept across Sean's body again, then moved to the armor resting at his feet. On the console the translation system caught another fragment of the analysis. Cross-species response level, unprecedented. Adaptive link potential, active. Sean stared at the words. Unprecedented does not sound normal. Cerelia slowly stood up. Her golden eyes shifted from the armor to Sean with a look that was no longer just surprise. Now it carried something deeper. Uncertainty. The armor should only respond to a Serati warrior, she said. It has never recognized an outsider. Sean pointed down at the glowing plates. Well, apparently your armor did not get that memo. The commander's holographic display expanded again, revealing several additional figures behind the armored officer. Their uniforms were different, lighter in color and filled with small devices along the sleeves. Scientists, Sean guessed. One of them stepped forward and began speaking rapidly in the Serati language. The translation system struggled to keep up but eventually produced a clear sentence. The human physiology appears compatible with the armor's symbiotic matrix. Sean let out a short laugh that held no humor at all. You mean your spacesuit thinks I am its owner now? Cerelia shook her head slowly. It is more complicated than ownership. The scientist continued speaking while pointing toward the data readouts. Another translated line appeared. Human biology shows high adaptive capacity. Cellular response rate supports symbiotic link. Sean crossed his arms. That sounds like the kind of thing people should test in a lab before declaring it a success. The commander raised a hand, silencing the scientists behind him. Then he looked directly at Sean Carter through the projection. Human, he said calmly, your species may possess a biological resilience that our records have underestimated. Sean tilted his head. You mean humans are tougher than you thought? The commander paused. Possibly far more adaptable. Cerelia looked back down at the armor again. The violet light was growing brighter with every passing second. Thin strands of energy began extending toward Sean's boots like curious tendrils reaching through the air. Sean took one slow step back. That looks like it wants to do something. Cerelia's voice dropped almost to a whisper. Yes, she said. It does. The commander's tone sharpened again. Human Sean Carter, do not move. Sean froze. The glowing strands reached a few inches closer. On the console another translated message appeared. Symbiotic connection attempt initiated. The glowing strands of violet energy stretched slowly through the air toward Sean Carter's boots, thin as threads but bright enough to illuminate the metal floor beneath them. For a moment the entire station seemed to hold its breath. Sean did not move. The commander's voice echoed from the console projection again, sharper now than before. Human Sean Carter, remain absolutely still. Sean swallowed. That instruction has already been followed. The strands touched the toe of his boot. The contact lasted less than a second, but the reaction was immediate. The armor plates on the floor flared with light so bright that the room flashed purple. The console alarms chirped rapidly as new data flooded across the screen faster than the translation system could keep up. Sean blinked against the sudden brightness. Okay, that definitely means something. Cerelia stepped forward quickly but stopped just short of the glowing plates. Her expression had shifted from surprise to something much deeper. Concern. The armor is testing compatibility, she said quietly. Sean slowly looked down at the energy strands now curling around the edge of his boot like curious living wires. Testing what exactly? The commander answered before she could. Whether your biology can sustain a symbiotic interface. Sean raised one eyebrow. And if the answer is no? The commander paused briefly. Then the process will terminate. Sean considered that for a second. Terminate the process, he said carefully. Right. The console suddenly chimed again with a louder tone. A new block of translated text appeared across the screen. Symbiotic matrix response level increasing. Adaptive host parameters detected. The scientists behind the commander began speaking rapidly in their own language again. Their voices overlapped with clear excitement now. One of them leaned closer to the commander and pointed toward the scanned data. Another translated line appeared on the console. Human cellular structure supports multi-environment survival. Sean glanced at Cerelia. Is that supposed to be unusual? She nodded slowly. For most species it is. Sean shrugged slightly. Humans survive deserts, oceans, mountains, snowstorms, and whatever this frozen rock is outside. Adaptation is kind of our specialty. The commander studied him through the projection with new interest. Your species evolved on a volatile world. Sean gave a small nod. Earth has weather. The commander seemed to consider that for a moment. Then he turned slightly as another scientist spoke urgently beside him. The translation system caught only part of the statement. Historical archives indicate no Serati armor has ever initiated bonding with a non-Serati host. The commander's gaze returned to Sean Carter. Until now. Sean exhaled slowly. I am starting to feel very popular. The armor plates suddenly shifted on the floor. One of the larger pieces lifted a few inches into the air and rotated slowly until it faced Sean directly again. The violet energy threads thickened, extending further up his boot before stopping just below his ankle. The console flashed another translated message. Symbiotic link stability holding. Compatibility rate rising. Cerelia stared at the data, disbelief still clear in her eyes. This is impossible, she murmured. Sean looked down again at the glowing strands. Yet here we are. Outside the observation window the alien fleet adjusted its formation, several of the enormous ships moving closer to the station. Their hull lights reflected across the frozen surface of the moon nearly 3,000 miles below. The commander spoke again, but now his voice carried something different. Not just curiosity. Calculation. Human Sean Carter, he said slowly, if this connection completes, the armor will recognize you as its primary host. Sean tilted his head. Meaning what exactly? The commander answered without hesitation. Meaning that a piece of Serati war technology older than our empire may now belong to a human mechanic. The room went silent for a moment. Sean looked at Cerelia. She looked back at him. Then the armor suddenly flared with light again and the console displayed one final line. Symbiotic bond phase 2 initiating. The moment the console displayed the word symbiotic bond phase 2 initiating, the atmosphere inside the small repair station changed again. The violet strand surrounding Sean Carter's boot suddenly expanded, no longer thin threads but flowing ribbons of light that moved with slow deliberate purpose. Sean looked down at them with raised eyebrows. Phase 2 does not sound optional, he said quietly. The commander's projection leaned forward slightly as if observing a rare scientific event. Behind him the Serati scientists were already arguing excitedly while pointing at their scanning instruments. Their translated voices overlapped across Sean's console. Energy synchronization detected. Neural resonance forming. Impossible cross-species alignment. Cerelia stepped closer to Sean, her golden eyes fixed on the glowing armor pieces that had begun rising slowly off the floor. Each plate hovered in the air with quiet precision, rotating as if examining him from every angle. This stage should only occur after formal warrior initiation, she said under her breath. Sean gave a short laugh that carried more nerves than humor. I do not remember signing up for any warrior program. The energy ribbons reached higher, brushing lightly against the fabric of his work pants before pausing again. Instead of tightening, the light pulsed gently as if waiting for something. The console chimed with another translated update. Host neural activity detected. Adaptive linking protocol engaged. Sean frowned. Now it is reading my brain. The commander spoke again, but this time the calm authority in his voice had been replaced by something far more serious. All Sarati vessels are to hold position, he ordered to someone off-screen. No one is to interfere with the bonding sequence. Sean glanced up at the projection. Bonding sequence, he repeated slowly. Cerelia finally looked at him directly. The armor is deciding if you can synchronize with it completely. Sean crossed his arms slightly. And if it decides yes? The answer came from the commander. Then you will become the first non-Sarati being in recorded history to wield living Sarati armor. Sean opened his mouth to respond but stopped when the largest armor plate drifted directly in front of his chest. The surface shimmered like liquid crystal, reflecting his own confused face back at him. Then something unexpected happened. The plate dimmed for a second, and a soft pulse of light traveled outward through the armor pieces like a signal. The scientists behind the commander fell silent instantly. One of them leaned closer to a monitor with clear disbelief. A new translation appeared. On the console. Memory matrix activated. Sean blinked. Memory matrix. Cerelia's voice dropped to a whisper. The armor is ancient. The commander nodded slowly. Older than the Dominion itself. The console displayed another line. Archival protocol engaged. Then the armor released a second pulse of light, brighter than before. Sean felt a sudden sensation behind his eyes, not pain, but a strange pressure like standing too close to a powerful magnetic field. Images flashed across the console screens as the armor transmitted fragments of stored data. Star maps. Battles. Fleets. Thousands of years of recorded Sarati history streaming through the station's systems in seconds. Sean stared at the screens as symbols translated into partial English phrases. First War of Unification. Fall of the Outer Legions. Oath of the Vanguard. Cerelia's eyes widened with recognition. These are Imperial records. The commander's voice grew quiet with awe. The armor is sharing its archive. Sean slowly shook his head. Wait a second. He pointed at the console where one new translated message appeared, larger than the others. Legacy host required. Sean read the words aloud. Legacy host required. He looked up at Cerelia. Please tell me that does not mean what it sounds like. Cerelia did not answer immediately. She was staring at the armor hovering in front of him as if witnessing something sacred. When she finally spoke, her voice carried both shock and realization. It means, she said slowly, the armor is not just bonding with you. Sean frowned. Then what is it doing? The armor pulsed again, brighter than ever before. The console translated one final line. Successor identified. The word successor lingered on the console screen like a message that refused to disappear, glowing in steady white letters while the entire station remained silent around it. Sean Carter stared at the display for a long second before slowly pointing at it. Okay, he said carefully, that word sounds extremely important and extremely not my problem. The armor hovering in front of him pulsed again, brighter than before, and the violet light reflected across the control panels and the metal walls of the station. Cerelia did not laugh this time. Her gaze remained fixed on the console with an expression that mixed awe with something much heavier. Concern. Behind the commander's projection, the Sarati scientists were no longer speaking over one another. Instead they stood completely still, staring at their instruments as if they were watching history unfold in real time. One of them finally stepped forward and spoke in a hushed tone. The translation system took several seconds before producing the sentence in English. The archive confirms the identification. Sean rubbed his forehead slowly. I am starting to dislike that sentence structure. The commander's voice returned, deeper now, carrying a gravity that had not been present earlier. The armor you activated is not standard Terra equipment. Sean glanced at the floating plates in front of him. That part one figured out. The commander continued. It is one of the Vanguard relics. Cerelia inhaled sharply beside him. Sean noticed the reaction immediately. That sounds important, he said quietly. She nodded once without looking away from the armor. The Vanguard relics were created before the Dominion existed, she explained softly. They were carried by the first Serati leaders during the wars that unified our worlds. Sean looked back at the projection. So that thing is basically a historical artifact. The commander shook his head slightly. More than that. Each relic contains the recorded knowledge and strategic memory of every host who has ever worn it. Sean glanced at the console where fragments of ancient star maps were still scrolling across the screen. So it is also a library. The commander's eyes narrowed. A library that chooses its next guardian. The room grew quiet again. Outside the observation window several of the massive Serati ships shifted position, their hull lights reflecting across the frozen moon 3,000 miles below. Sean noticed something new on the sensor display. Smaller craft were now detaching from the larger vessels and forming a loose perimeter around the station. He pointed toward the screen. That looks suspiciously like you are preparing for something. The commander did not deny it. The identification of a relic successor has political consequences. Sean gave a short incredulous laugh. Political consequences. I run a repair shop. Cerelia finally turned toward him. Not anymore, she said quietly. The console chimed again with another translated alert. Relic Authority Signal Broadcasting. Sean frowned. Authority Signal. The commander nodded slowly. Every Serati vessel in this system is now receiving confirmation that a relic successor has appeared. Sean looked from the projection to the armor and back again. Let me guess, he said carefully. That kind of announcement attracts attention. The commander's expression hardened slightly. From the entire Dominion. Cerelia's eyes widened. And from those who oppose it. Sean blinked. You mean enemies? The commander did not answer immediately, which told Sean everything he needed to know. At that exact moment the station's sensors emitted a sharp warning tone that none of them had heard before. The display shifted automatically to long-range detection. Sean leaned toward the screen. New signals were appearing beyond the edge of the system, faint but rapidly increasing in strength. Sean slowly exhaled. Please tell me that is just a sensor glitch. One of the Serati scientists spoke urgently behind the commander. The translation appeared seconds later. Multiple unidentified vessels exiting jump space. The commander's voice turned cold. It appears the signal has already been heard. Sean stared at the growing cluster of new contacts on the sensor map. Then he looked back at the glowing armor hovering in front of him. Great, he muttered. The entire galaxy just found out about the guy who did the laundry. The sensor display continued filling with new signals until the screen looked like a storm of blinking lights across the edge of the star system, and Sean Carter slowly leaned back in his chair as if distance alone might make the situation smaller. So let me summarize, he said quietly while rubbing his temples. Your ancient space armor decided I am its successor, your empire just broadcast that information to half the galaxy, and now unknown ships are arriving to check it out. He glanced at Cerelia. Did I miss anything? Cerelia did not answer immediately. She stood beside the hovering armor, the violet light reflecting across her face while the pieces continued orbiting slowly around Sean like silent guardians. Outside the observation window the Serati fleet held its formation, enormous ships drifting in careful alignment around the tiny repair station. But beyond them, new faint flashes of light appeared in the distance as more vessels exited faster than light travel near the edge of the system. Sean noticed Cerelia watching the sensor screen rather than the approaching ships. "You look like you expected this," he said quietly. She hesitated before answering. "I feared it," she admitted. Sean folded his arms. "Big difference." She turned to face him then, her golden eyes studying him with a level of focus that made him slightly uncomfortable. "Sean Carter," she said carefully, "do you understand what the armor calling you successor actually means?" Sean glanced down at the glowing plates circling him. "Apparently it means I should stop doing laundry." She shook her head gently. "It means you now carry the legacy of the first Sarah T. Vanguard." Sean blinked. "That still sounds like your problem." Cerelia stepped closer to the console and pulled up the star map again. The projection expanded across the air between them, showing the network of Dominion territory spreading across hundreds of systems. Then she highlighted a handful of distant regions glowing red along the outer borders. "Not every civilization accepts Sarah T. authority," she explained quietly. "Some have been waiting centuries for a weakness in the Dominion." Sean studied the map. "And a human accidentally inheriting your empire's ancient technology qualifies as a weakness. Or an opportunity," she said softly. Sean exhaled slowly. "Fantastic." The console chimed again, and another translation appeared from the Sarah T. fleet. "Multiple factions requesting access to Relic successor." Sean raised an eyebrow. "They are already asking to meet me." The commander's projection returned to the screen, his expression noticeably more tense than before. "Human Sean Carter, the situation is evolving rapidly." Sean leaned toward the console. "That is one way to describe it." The commander continued. "Several non-allied vessels have entered the system and are transmitting diplomatic inquiries." Sean frowned. "Diplomatic inquiries?" "Requests to verify your existence," the commander clarified. Sean leaned back again and glanced at Cerelia. "So the galaxy just learned about the mechanic who inherited ancient alien armor." She met his gaze with a seriousness that carried no humor at all. "And they will want to know what kind of leader you will become." Sean laughed once, short and quiet. "Leader." He gestured around the cramped repair station filled with spare parts and tool racks. "I fix cargo engines and broken air recyclers." Cerelia looked at him carefully for a long moment. Then she said something that made the room feel suddenly smaller. "That may be exactly why the armor chose you." Sean frowned slightly. "What does that mean?" She glanced toward the hovering relic, which pulsed with steady violet light as if listening to the conversation. "The first Vanguard were not rulers," she said softly. "They were protectors." Sean looked back at the sensor screen where more distant ships continued appearing beyond the edge of the system. Then he sighed and leaned back in his chair again. "Great," he muttered. "Because it looks like a lot of people are about to test that job description." The first thing Sean Carter noticed was that the armor was no longer simply hovering around him. It was studying him. The violet plates rotated slowly in the air, moving with an eerie precision that reminded him less of machinery and more of a living creature observing a new environment. The light pulsing from the relic grew steadier, almost calm, and the console beside him suddenly chimed with a completely new tone that none of them had heard before. Sean leaned toward the screen and squinted at the translation scrolling across it. "Okay," he muttered quietly. "Now it is running another analysis." Cerelia stepped closer beside him, her posture tense but curious. "What kind of analysis?" Sean read the next translated line slowly. "Comparative evolution model." The commander's projection immediately turned toward the scientists behind him. Their instruments were already displaying new streams of data that had not existed seconds earlier. One of them spoke urgently and the translation system struggled for several seconds before producing a clear sentence. "The relic is projecting future compatibility simulations." Sean frowned. "Future simulations?" Cerelia's eyes widened slightly. "The armor is calculating potential outcomes. Sean leaned back in his chair. That sounds like something that should involve my permission. The console continued translating new lines of information as the relic pulsed again. Biological adaptation trajectory analysis. Cross-species evolutionary stability detected. Sean rubbed his chin slowly. I do not like where this is going. The commander's voice returned with unusual focus. Explain your concern. Sean pointed toward the screen. Your armor is predicting something about humans. Cerelia leaned forward and read the next line before the translation finished processing. When the English text appeared, her expression changed completely. Human physiology compatible with multiple environments without genetic modification. Sean shrugged slightly. Yes. Earth has deserts, frozen continents, jungles, oceans, mountains, storms, and about 1,000 different bacteria that try to kill us daily. Humans adapt. The Serati scientists behind the commander stared at their displays as if they had just uncovered a missing piece of a puzzle centuries old. One of them spoke again, and this time the translation arrived almost instantly. If human biology can maintain stable integration with the relic matrix, it means the armor could function beyond Serati-controlled worlds. Sean blinked. Your armor cannot normally do that. Cerelia answered quietly. Serati physiology evolved under very specific stellar conditions. Outside our core systems, the armor requires constant recalibration. Sean pointed to himself. Humans do not. The commander's eyes narrowed slightly as he studied the new data. Which means a human host could potentially operate relic technology across environments where Serati warriors cannot survive without support. Sean leaned back slowly. You are saying I am basically a universal adapter. The relic pulsed again, brighter than before, and the console translated another message that made the entire room fall silent. Long-term projection, human host enables expansion of relic network. Cerelia whispered the words quietly as she read them. Expansion of relic network. Sean looked at her. That sounds big. She nodded slowly. The relics were designed to coordinate entire fleets of vanguard units. Sean stared at the glowing plates hovering around him. You mean these things can command warships? The commander answered calmly. Yes. Sean leaned forward again and pointed at the sensor screen where more distant vessels continued appearing near the edge of the system. Then I assume every one of those ships out there just realized the same thing. The commander did not deny it. Outside the window the Serati fleet tightened its formation slightly, their hull lights glowing brighter as defensive systems activated across the formation. Sean glanced at Cerelia. Your empire is nervous. She did not look away from the relic. Not just the empire. Sean followed her gaze toward the sensor map where new unidentified signals continued arriving from deep space. Then he sighed softly. Because now everyone believes the human mechanic might control technology that can change the balance of power in the entire galaxy. The relic pulsed once more, and the console displayed a final translated message that made Sean sit up straight. Relic Authority Interface ready for host command. The message Relic Authority Interface ready for host command remained glowing on the console as if the entire station was waiting for Sean Carter to do something that no one in the galaxy had ever expected from a human mechanic. Sean stared at the words for a long moment before slowly leaning back in his chair. I am guessing there is not a user manual for this, he said quietly. The violet armor hovering around him pulsed again, reacting to the sound of his voice as though it recognized him now. Outside the window the Serati fleet tightened its formation once more, while the distant cluster of unidentified vessels continued to multiply on the edge of the system. The sensor screen showed them approaching steadily, not fast enough to be an attack but not slow enough to be casual either. Sean pointed toward the display. They are getting closer. The commander's projection nodded once. They are observing. Sean frowned. That sounds polite. Cerelia stepped beside him and studied the tactical display carefully. Observation can become interference very quickly, she said. Sean rubbed his hands together slowly while glancing at the console again. So the armor wants a command. The commander answered immediately. Yes. Sean tilted his head. What kind of command? The answer came from one of the Serati scientists standing behind the commander. The translation appeared seconds later. The relic interface allows the host to connect with Vanguard systems. Sean looked back toward the window where dozens of Serati warships floated silently in orbit. You mean those ships? The commander's voice remained calm but carried clear urgency now. The relics were designed to coordinate fleets during the founding wars of the Dominion. Sean gave a quiet whistle. So if I press the wrong button I accidentally command an alien navy. Cerelia looked at him with surprising seriousness. It is not about commanding, she said. It is about choosing. Sean raised an eyebrow. Choosing what? She pointed at the sensor map where the new arrivals continued appearing. Choosing what kind of future this discovery creates. Sean leaned forward again and stared at the blinking lights representing the approaching ships. You mean everyone out there is waiting to see what the human mechanic does next? The commander nodded slowly. Yes. Sean sighed and rested his elbows on the console. No pressure then. The relic pulsed again, brighter than before, and a faint circular pattern of violet light appeared on the console surface like an interface waiting for input. Symbols formed inside the glowing circle and the translation system began identifying them one by one. Defensive Network. Vanguard Link. Relic Protocol Archive. Sean studied the options carefully. This thing really does think I am in charge now. Cerelia watched the interface with quiet intensity. The relic would not offer control if it did not believe you were capable of using it. Sean gave a small skeptical smile. You have never seen my repair logs. The commander interrupted gently. Human Sean Carter, the approaching vessels are not aligned with the Dominion. Sean looked at the sensor display again where several unknown ships were now within a few million miles of the station. That means they probably want the relic. Yes, the commander said simply. Sean rested one hand on the glowing interface circle but did not activate anything yet. The violet light reflected across his face while the relic plates hovered closer around him like silent advisors. He glanced sideways at Cerelia. If the first Vanguard were protectors like you said, he asked quietly, what would they do right now? Cerelia did not hesitate. They would make it clear that the relic does not belong to anyone who tries to take it. Sean nodded slowly and looked back at the interface. Good, he said softly. Because I was thinking the same thing. Then he finally touched the glowing circle on the console and the relic instantly responded as the entire Serati fleet outside the station lit up with new signals at once. The moment Sean Carter touched the glowing interface, the relic reacted like a living mind waking up after centuries of silence. The violet plates orbiting him shifted formation instantly, aligning themselves around his body in a perfect circular pattern as if responding to a command they had been waiting thousands of years to hear again. The console erupted with new signals so quickly that the translation system struggled to keep up. Outside the observation window something even more dramatic happened. Every Serati warship in orbit lit up with synchronized pulses of blue light along their hulls, the signals rippling across the fleet like a wave traveling through metal and starlight. Sean leaned forward toward the console. Okay, that definitely did something. The commander's projection reappeared on the screen, and for the first time since their conversation began his expression held unmistakable astonishment. The relic interface has established a Vanguard link with the entire fleet, he said slowly. Sean blinked. I pressed one button. Behind the commander, the Serati scientists were staring at their instruments with disbelief. New translated lines appeared across Sean's console. Relic Command Authority verified. Fleet Response Protocol active. Cerelia looked out the window where the warships had begun shifting their formation with quiet precision. The fleet moved like a single organism responding to a shared signal. They are recognizing your authority, she whispered. Sean leaned back slightly and glanced between the sensor screen and the relic hovering around him. I was hoping for something smaller. Like turning on the lights. The commander's voice cut in again, calm but firm. Human Sean Carter, the unidentified vessels approaching this system have already received the same broadcast. Sean glanced at the tactical display. The unknown ships were no longer drifting slowly forward. They had stopped just beyond the outer edge of the Serati fleet's formation, as if reconsidering their approach. Sean pointed toward the screen. They noticed. Cerelia nodded quietly. They expected uncertainty. Sean folded his arms. Instead they got a human pressing buttons. The relic pulsed again and the console produced a new interface window. This one was different from the earlier options. Instead of technical commands, a single translated directive appeared across the center of the display. Vanguard Protocol ready. Sean frowned. What is Vanguard Protocol? The commander answered carefully. The founding directive of the original relic bearers. Cerelia stepped closer to the console and read the translated explanation appearing below the title. Her voice softened as she spoke the words aloud. Protect the frontier. Preserve balance among the stars. Prevent domination by any single power. Sean raised an eyebrow. That sounds less like a war command and more like a job description. The commander nodded slowly. It was the oath taken by the first Vanguard leaders. Sean leaned back in his chair again while looking out the observation window at the massive fleet surrounding his tiny repair station. Beyond them the unidentified vessels still lingered at the edge of the system, their signals now cautious rather than aggressive. Sean rubbed the back of his neck. So let me get this straight, he said quietly. The armor did not choose me because I am a warrior. Cerelia looked at him with a small, thoughtful smile. No, Sean glanced at the glowing relic pieces circling him like silent satellites. It chose me because humans are stubborn enough to protect things that do not belong to us. The relic pulsed once more in response to his voice and the console displayed one final message confirming the interface command. Vanguard Protocol accepted. Sean exhaled slowly while watching the distant ships beyond the Serati fleet begin turning away from the system one by one. Then he leaned back and gave a quiet laugh. All right, he said softly. I guess the repair station just got promoted to Frontier Headquarters. The repair station became quiet again after the last of the unidentified ships disappeared beyond the edge of the system, their signals fading one by one until the sensor screen returned to something that finally resembled normal space traffic. Sean Carter sat back in his chair and stared out through the observation window at the frozen moon below, its pale surface stretching across thousands of miles of silent ice beneath the stars. Around him the violet relic plates slowly drifted back into a calmer orbit, their glow softer now, almost peaceful, as if the ancient technology had finished testing its new host and decided the moment of crisis had passed. The Serati fleet remained in position around the station, massive vessels holding formation like patient guardians rather than an army preparing for conflict. Sean rubbed the back of his neck and exhaled slowly. Well, he muttered, that was a strange afternoon. Cerelia stood beside the window watching the distant stars, her silver hair catching the faint light of the control panels. You just changed the balance of power in the frontier, she said quietly. Sean gave a small shrug. I mostly pressed a glowing button. The commander's projection appeared once more on the console, though the tension that had filled his voice earlier had been replaced with something far more respectful. Human Sean Carter, he said slowly, the Dominion Council will want to speak with you. Sean leaned forward and rested his elbows on the console. That sounds official. The commander nodded once. You now hold a relic authority older than the Dominion itself. Sean glanced down at the hovering armor pieces that had once been nothing more than something he accidentally washed in a machine designed for greasy work uniforms. Funny thing, he said quietly. A few hours ago I thought this was just armor. Cerelia looked at him with a faint smile that carried both admiration and disbelief. "It is more than armor," she said softly. Sean nodded toward the window again where the Serati fleet slowly began repositioning itself across orbit. "So what happens now?" The commander answered without hesitation. "Now the frontier knows that the vanguard has returned." Sean sat quietly for a moment, thinking about the thousands of star systems displayed earlier on. The map, the unknown civilizations watching from the darkness between stars, and the relic technology floating calmly around him like a patient companion waiting for its next command. Finally he leaned back again and gave a quiet laugh that echoed through the small repair station. "You know," he said thoughtfully, "I opened this place because I liked fixing broken things." Cerelia raised an eyebrow. "And now?" Sean looked out at the stars one more time, the violet glow of the relic reflecting faintly across the glass. "Now it looks like the galaxy has a few repairs that need doing." The relic pulsed gently in agreement, and somewhere beyond the frozen moon the Serati fleet began following the signal of its new vanguard host, guided not by conquest or power, but by the quiet, stubborn instinct that had carried humanity across deserts, oceans, and stars alike. Sean Carter had never planned to lead anything larger than a repair station orbiting a forgotten rock in space. But sometimes the universe did not choose its guardians based on strength or rank. Sometimes it chose the one person stubborn enough to fix a problem simply because it was the right thing to do.